So the Federal Reserve is not raising interest rates. The Fed just announced its decision, a move being closely watched in D.C., Wall Street, and Main Street. So for more, let's bring in our mavens of all things money, Elizabeth Schulze and Alexis Christoforous. Alexis, let's start with you and break down all the numbers for us as we await Powell's comments.
So the Federal Reserve, for the second month in a row, not raising interest rates as they see how these higher rates sort of play out through the economy. Inflation still higher than the Fed wants at 3.7%. We know the Fed has said its target there is at 2%. So there is still more work to be done. And though the Fed didn't raise interest rates today, they definitely did leave the door open for more interest rate hikes down the road. They did acknowledge that the economy remains strong and that the job market is also strong. Remember, this is the 11th, before this, we had 11 interest rate hikes in just the past year and a half. And we're starting to see that filter through the economy in the way of higher mortgage rates, which have now more than doubled to about 8%. We've got interest on credit cards now near a record 21%. Despite that, consumers are still spending, and we have a very strong and somewhat tight labor market. We'll learn more about that on Friday when the government releases its latest report. But overall, the Fed is really taking a wait-and-see attitude, deciding not to move on rates now, but some economists say we could see that rate hike come in December.
All right, so Elizabeth, as Americans remain pretty much pessimistic about the economy right now, you know, President Biden's approval rating among Democrats is just tanking. So how's the Biden administration plan to spin this?
And Kira, it's this dichotomy we've seen where a lot of the economic data, when it looks at the jobs market, when you look at GDP growth, is remarkably strong. And yet Americans continue to say that the economy is not in good shape, and they have very poor ratings of President Biden's handling of the economy. And this is something the White House is aware of. The president continues to try to focus in his public remarks on legislation that he's passed that would, over the long term, lower costs for things like health care. He's proposed legislation for lower child care costs. But part of the problem there is that that takes time to kick in. So that's not something that Americans are immediately feeling. And part of the disconnect, at least when you look at the surveys and you see why people say the economy is so bad, Kira, comes down to that inflation piece. And that's why the Fed has been doing all these interest rate hikes over the past year and a half, is to try to bring down prices. Prices have come down. There was a 9% inflation rate just over a year ago. We're now closer to 3%. But the fact is that people are still paying more, especially for a lot of everyday goods, groceries and gas, and that's weighing on their sentiment, and that's weighing on their feelings about the economy. And it's why the Fed is saying it has to continue this inflation fight. Of course, politically, the Fed is independent, but it's saying it continues to focus on inflation. It's not ruling out more interest rate hikes as part of that fight against inflation.
So, Alexis, what are we expecting to hear from Powell?
Well, I think, you're going to hear more about, reporters will have an opportunity to ask him questions, and they're going to be asking about where does he see inflation headed? What is it going to take for the Federal Reserve to say, all right, enough? Does it still mean that inflation has to hit 2%? Are they okay with it not hitting 2%, but seeing a bigger pullback in overall economic growth and job growth? I think these are some of the questions you're going to see. And also, we've seen a recent run-up, a rather dramatic and swift run-up in Treasury yields. These are interest rates tied to bonds. They can also tighten financial conditions, and some are saying that alone sort of acts as one or two, maybe even three interest rate hikes from the Federal Reserve. So there'll be questions, I would imagine, about how they are seeing that rise in bond yields and how that's factoring into their decisions to raise or not to raise interest rates in the months ahead.
All right, Elizabeth Schulze, Alexis Christoforous, ladies, thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.